Hey, everyone. The U.S. House just voted to end the longest government shutdown in American history. And the deal behind it has a lot of moving parts that most folks haven't really heard explained clearly yet. And, what's interesting is that there's a small detail buried in this deal that most people would never expect. And it affects senators in a way that, well, let's just say I'll explain that part in a moment, because it definitely caught my attention. So yeah, stick with me because this is one of those moments where understanding what's in the deal can actually help you make sense of what's coming next for federal workers. Healthcare costs, SNAP benefits, security funding, and even what this means for the next few months of political tension. Before we get deeper into everything, let me ask you something. When you hear government shutdown, what's the first thing you feel? Stress, frustration, confusion, maybe just exhaustion? Let me know down in the comments. All right. So let's talk about what just happened. President Trump has officially signed the deal to end this 43-day shutdown, and that's after the House voted 222 to 209 to approve the funding bill. That is pretty much as close to party line as it gets. What's more, this shutdown didn't just drag on, it completely froze things across the country, like air travel delays, closed parks and museums, stalled SNAP benefits, and hundreds of thousands of federal workers going weeks without pay. And all of it started because of one major disagreement over healthcare subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. Now, you might be wondering, how did something involving healthcare lead to all this chaos? Well, here's how people have been explaining it. Democrats wanted to extend the enhanced ACA subsidies that help more than 20 million Americans keep their insurance affordable. Republicans didn't want to extend those subsidies anymore because they said the expansions were from the COVID era and weren't meant to be permanent. And at first, President Trump hinted that he might support some kind of healthcare middle ground, but then the administration backed away and instead floated ideas like federal health accounts. The problem was no actual legislative text ever came out of those ideas, so nothing moved forward and everything just kind of sat in place. And also, while all of this was going on, the administration started putting a lot of pressure on federal workers. There were layoffs, and there was even talk of possibly not giving back pay this time around, which is something that usually gets guaranteed after a shutdown ends. It created a lot of fear for families who were already struggling. So then, things stayed stuck until a small group of Senate Democrats decided to break from their party and join Republicans in moving a bill forward without the healthcare subsidy extension. That move upset a ton of people on their own side, but the argument was basically, look, families are hurting, federal workers are hurting, and we can't keep holding this hostage. It wasn't a popular choice, but it was the thing that actually broke the stalemate. And once that happened, the House took it up. 6 Democrats there voted with Republicans to pass it. On the Republican side, only 2 members voted against it. And after weeks of the House being in recess, suddenly there was a vote. It passed. President Trump signed it. And now government doors are opening again. So now let's talk about what's actually in the deal, because there's a lot in here that affects everyday people. One of the biggest things is federal worker protections. The new law fully reverses all layoffs that happened during the shutdown. That means every federal worker who lost their job because of the shutdown is getting reinstated. And every worker who was furloughed or working without pay is getting their back pay. That is a huge relief for families, especially folks who have been literally scraping by for over a month. And, it's interesting because back pay has been a huge point of debate. In 2019, a Senate report found that shutdowns actually cost taxpayers over $300 million. And denying back pay was something some officials floated earlier, but now it's off the table. So the government will be fully funded through January 30th, 2026 for most federal operations, and some departments like agriculture, veterans programs, and military construction have their full year funding set. That gives at least a little bit of stability, even if it's temporary. Another important part is the ACA subsidy situation. The subsidies themselves were not extended in this deal, but Senate Republicans agreed to hold a vote in mid-December. Now, that doesn't promise anything will pass. And the House didn't agree to any vote at all, so it's still shaky. Millions of people might see their premiums rise in 2026 if nothing gets done. So if you rely on ACA coverage, this is definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned something in the bill that kind of catches you off guard? Here it is. There's a provision in the law that says senators can sue the federal government for $500,000 if their phone or digital communications were collected by investigators without prior notice. And this only applies to senators, not members of the House. It's retroactive to 2022, which is the same period that 8 Republican senators had their records seized during the special counsel investigation into the 2020 election. People from both parties called this out. Hakeem Jeffries called it a slush fund. Chip Roy said he couldn't understand how it even got in there. But both sides decided not to remove it because doing that would have sent the bill back to the Senate and extended the shutdown. Speaker Johnson is saying he'll try to repeal that part next week, but for now, it stays. Speaking of unusual parts of the bill, there's another piece that boosts security funding for officials. It includes over $200 million for congressional security alone and additional funding for the Supreme Court and U.S. Marshals. This is in response to recent violence targeting public officials, like the attack on commentator Charlie Kirk. So, there's a real concern right now about political violence increasing. There's also something in the bill that gives the District of Columbia more control over its own money again. Before this, D.C. had to stick to its 2024 budget numbers, which was creating a huge strain. Now, the city can use its updated budget and continue funding essential services. Residents and local leaders have been pressing hard for this change. And next, we have a pretty big shift regarding hemp products. The new law changes the definition of hemp so that products with more than 0.4 milligrams of THC per container, or anything with synthetic cannabinoids like Delta-8, will be banned starting next year. This is going to hit those gummies and vape products seen in convenience stores and online. Lawmakers in Kentucky were split, which makes sense since hemp is a major industry there. Rand Paul wanted the ban removed, but Mitch McConnell said the ban was important to keep intoxicating products off the market. Another part of the deal revives the Wedgetail E-7 radar jet program. The Pentagon wanted to cancel it, saying it wasn't going to be survivable in modern warfare, but Congress put $400 million into keeping it alive. They're saying it's better to keep working on the jet while space-based radar systems are still years away. So yeah, you can see this is more than just a quick funding bill. It's basically a mix of temporary... Just pausing for a moment to share something important with you. We've partnered with Chapter, a service we feel confident recommending for clear, honest Medicare help. They'll connect you with a licensed advisor, compare every Medicare plan in your area, and help you save money. Most people save around $1,100 a year. It's free, and their care advocate team is there to support you even after you're signed up. Call 615-639-1937 or visit askchapter.org/money using the link in the comments below. Let's keep going. Funding, political concessions, and long-term policy shifts. And even though the shutdown is over, the political fallout is still happening. Some Democrats are very upset with how things ended. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said the shutdown allowed cruelty by letting services stall and pushing federal workers into financial harm. The White House, meanwhile, said Democrats were responsible for the damage and blamed them for prolonging the shutdown. So, yes, even with the government open, things are still tense in Washington. Now, something people keep asking in the comments is, okay, what happens next? And the truth is the next big fight is coming in December over those ACA subsidy votes. If nothing changes, healthcare premiums will rise for millions in 2026. That is a huge deal. An illegal payout provision for senators is definitely not going away quietly. You'll probably see a lot of debate on that in the next couple of weeks. And of course, another funding deadline is coming up in January. And unless both sides really want to avoid repeating all of this, they're going to have to negotiate again. You see, these shutdowns don't just freeze the government. They freeze people's lives. They freeze paychecks, services, travel, food assistance, and even data that economists need to understand how things are going. And when it drags on this long, it kind of shows how fragile these negotiations can be. So what does all this mean for you? Well, if you're a federal worker, back pay is coming. If you rely on SNAP, things should start stabilizing again. If you're watching healthcare premiums, keep an eye on December. And honestly, if you're just a regular person trying to get through the month, this is one of those moments that reminds us how decisions in Washington hit home in really real ways. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you feel like this deal solves the problem, or does it just pause it? I think a lot of people are feeling both relief and frustration, and those feelings are valid. Thanks for being here, thanks for listening, and I hope you take a moment for yourself today. You deserve it.